So perhaps this way is better. If you don't hear, you may say. I'm presenting first to Tatiana Ferreira and Carvalho. They are both clinical psychologists. Tatiana is also in training in the Existential Society of Psychotherapy and works in the Fundação Casa de Aula. And Carvalho, she's also a clinical psychologist and also works in the therapeutic community of Fundação. Branca Sá Pires is a clinical psychologist working and also existential psychotherapist and works in a therapeutic community center near Lisbon, English College, and works with family and risk and adolescents, children and adults. So each two communications have 20 minutes, okay? And then we will have a discussion. Thank you.
Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here. The theme of our communication is phenomenological perspective of schizophrenia. I'm beginning by contextualizing our work. This paper happened the study of three articles of three contemporary authors. They are Joseph Farnes, Thomas Hughes, and Louis Sass. They focus on the areas such as phenomenology and psychopathology. Our aim is to approach the progress of schizophrenia as to reinforce the importance of the establishment of an early diagnosis. Now, Edith Carvalho did in more detail.
In the central article in this presentation, Farnes refers other authors who have proposed certain modifications which occur in the development of schizophrenia. He holds that different changes which frequently occur before the onset of this disturbance develop at cognitive, affective, perceptive, motor, and corporeal levels. Mahler has also contributed greatly to this discussion through a study which used naturalistic intervention interviews with 20 patients in early stages of schizophrenia. They have found also alterations happening in different fields, such as self-experience and philosophical. In relation to the early phases of schizophrenia, Farnes has investigated patients who have been admitted to a psychiatric department and found results which supported those previous studies. Later, in 2003, in a more advanced study based on structured interviews made up of 92 items, Farnes found that most patients showing changes in the self were admitted to hospital initially with other diagnoses. He has proposed that the problem with this misdiagnosis might be due to two factors. One is the unspecific nature of patients' complaints, like sadness or anxiety, and the other being the lack of knowledge regarding the psychotic experiences in schizophrenia. This highlights the need to explore more deeply these complaints of the patients. Regarding the changes which occur in the self, Farnes brings us the concept of presence. This is connected with the immersion of oneself in the world, as one actively interacts with objects and other people. This happens at a pre-reflexive and sensitive level of the self, as this is one's own perspective. Pre-reflexive conscience happens when certain perspectives, sensations, and suffering present in a direct way. It entails an automatic self-reference. The first-person givenness makes the experience subjective. The awareness of oneself can't be apart from the experience itself. Through this, one acquires habits and inclinations. In early stages of schizophrenia, there is a disturbance in the ipsity, where there's the emergence in the experience is altered. And this can also reveal a distance between perception and action. For instance, a patient describes that his feelings of experiencing something appear only after a few seconds. So he says, in that moment, I didn't even realize she was hugging me. It was as if I hadn't even felt her touch. This is as if the experience is filtered and deprived of its fullness. It's unconnected emotionally and affectively. Another change which Parnas supports can be observed at corporeal level. Conscience has an experiential and both a corporeal base. The body has an ambiguous experiential status, wavering between two opposite experiential poles. So on one end, it is a lived, a spiritualized, subjective body, and on the other end, it is a physical body, an objective one. In the onset of schizophrenia, there is a variety of dissociations in the way one experiences the body. There is a tendency to experience it as an object. It is as if there is an experiential distance between subjectivity and corporeality. A resident at Casa de Alba has said, "I'm not myself. I feel strange. I'm not in my own body. I feel distant from myself. I'm somewhere else." And another, "I feel disconnected from my body and the surrounding physical world." The most frequent initial change is the sensation of being disconnected from the body. It's as if being separated. It's as if my body is too small to be inhabited. A clear distortion of the experience is the loss of connection with the body. The unity body-mind seems disintegrated, and there is a sensation of fragmentation with a pre-psychotic panic of a literal disintegration. And another example, I was walking and it seemed that my legs were moving on their own. I started thinking that I actually couldn't stop walking. It was as if my body didn't belong to me anymore. I got scared of whether I was losing control over it. There can also be abrupt changes in the stream of consciousness, thought, and temporal flow, as well as an obstruction in the experience between the self and the content. It is as if mental content gained autonomy and came from nowhere. It's separated from the self. This interferes with the flow of thoughts and is often described by patients as if there was an automatic interruption of thought. However, in the outset, patients still recognize their thoughts as their own. They report, for instance, that their thoughts are dense, encapsulated, and, for instance, mostly on the right side of their brain. People often feel overwhelmed with their thoughts, feeling a loss of meaning and structure. There is a clear distinction between this and ruminant, depressive rumination. This hyper-reflexity, its content is emotionally vain, it's neutral. It is as if, another example, I had to analyze things in all possible perspectives. My thoughts suffocate me, and I feel exhausted. I can't stop them. Other experiences might regard an obstruction of thought, where there is an abrupt loss of his flow. A patient has reported with concern of having lost consciousness of what he was doing only for a few seconds. hyper-reflexity and the flow of feeling of oneself are normally associated to a distortion or duplication between an observant ego and observed ego. It compromises the function of ipsity. And another example, it is as if I can't get involved and have feelings towards people. When I'm with them, it's as if I'm watching them from the outside. Solipsism happens as there is a limitation in the self. Changes described refer to the body experience, stream of consciousness, as well as present. And they disrupt this balance in the basic relationship of the self. These changes seem to report to the worldview, as many people in early stages of schizophrenia start focusing on the metaphysical, philosophical, or supernatural concerns. The search for the metaphysical seems to arise from an attempt to establish an existential reorientation and reach a new positioning in face of these great changes occurring in the experiential self. Hyper-reflexity and solipsism seem to compensate this feeling of perplexity and loss of contact with reality. To illustrate, it was said, I have to define and analyze all that I think. I need new concepts for the world and for human existence. I'm consumed in these new interests that gradually invade my way of living and thinking. I have the duty to lock myself indoors in my spirit and work as much as I can in all that I can towards the progress of civilization and the broadening of human consciousness. When this transition happens, the disorder becomes thematic through the development of delirium and hallucinations. The self-centeredness and referral of the self precede the development of these phenomena to the point of a literal resonance between the internal experience and the events of the outside world. As another example, a patient has said, they looked at me and then they looked at the window. They wanted me to jump off. Many of these expressions relate to a fundamental transformation in the sense of possession and control of thought, actions, sensations, emotions, and bodily experiences. In the disturbance of the self, there seems to be a primary transformation of the self, and a progression of these phenomena illustrate the transition to schizophrenia. To finish, I'm leaving you with another example of more advanced stages. A resident has said, I used to be a common person, but I've been having signs all my life. I realized that what is behind all of this? I belong to another reality, a parallel metaphysical one. That is where the voices come from. They make me hurt, especially in the abdomen. And they tell me to be abusive, but I can't give in. I need to stay strong. I will be able to free from this physical world once my mum pays her karmic debts, and only after this process will I be able to progress to a higher place. Thank you very much.
Now we are going to listen to Branca Sá Pires, and we could have 5 minutes, but I think it would be better to just discuss at the end, because both communications are so much interconnected that I think that we can discuss after both. Thank you. So, Branca.
Hello. So good morning. I'd like to say thank you for having me here. It's really a pleasure, and I'm so happy to share with you some of our work. It is very special to be a part of such a wonderful Congress. So I work at Fundação Aju, Jerónimo Zera, which is in Cascais, and I am a clinical psychologist there, so I do psychology, and I'm a part of the psychology team. But I'm also an existential therapist, and that has really influenced my work there and what we do there.
Peço desculpa.
Okay, let me just... Okay, so we are a community-based clinical service, which means we do clinical work inside a community setting. We live, people live right next to us. They knock on the door when they are not well. They come to us when they are not feeling well. Parents and children, everyone comes in a very open way. So we are very part of the community, and this is very special to have this way of working with the families. We do psychological evaluations, we do therapy, we give parental counseling. But this is done in a way that people feel it's a part of life. It's not a strange setting in a hospital or away from their day-to-day life. And so we work with many different ages and many different life situations. This is the place where we work, so it's a little house. And we are a multidisciplinary team, so we have many different colleagues from many different areas, and we offer many different services, from social services to welfare to different projects for different age ranges, and also we have pastoral care for whoever needs. We work all together to try to help people in whatever they may need. Who are the people we work with? They're typically people who have terrible, terrible lives. There is a history of neglect, abuse, of trauma, of aggression. There is a lot of aggression in the families. There is lots of social and economical instability. People are very disorganized. They have very low literacy, and many are in social exclusion. They don't come because of this. They're usually referenced by the services, if they come by the services, because they don't collaborate with typical services, they don't go to the doctor, they don't go and collaborate with the social workers, so they're difficult people. And then we bring them into therapy and realize actually a lot has happened to bring them into this situation. So usually all our other colleagues are not aware of how terrible their lives have been. So how does this connect with what I do? I will talk about my work particularly with children and adolescents, and the basis of our work is phenomenology. So the phenomenon is whatever a person brings to therapy at the day they come to therapy, and that is what we deal with and what we work with. I try to set aside my biases and what I think happens in whatever situation the person brings or the child brings, and try to put away my expectations and just be. And this is very important because typically children are told how to behave and what to do, and to just be accepted as they are can be quite important. Let me just... Okay. Let me just go back, if I can go back. Yeah. What does this mean in practice? Phenomenology has this big word. In practice, it means that the sessions are not structured. The child uses the time however the child wants. So sometimes they'll just sit on the chair and talk. Other times we go play. Other times we use water. Other times we use expressive materials. Sometimes they need to break things. So sessions are very whatever they need them to be. And sometimes all of this happens in one session, so things can be quite intense. But it is accepted that whatever they bring, whatever they need, whatever they have to talk about, we are there for them. And this changes a lot of their experience of being treated as children, and especially as disruptive children. So our work is also existential. I like Viktor Frankl a lot. The way he looks at how human suffering can be still elaborated, and life can still have meaning even though things can go very, very wrong. So we try to work a lot on choice and what choices children have, and adolescents, in their very limited life choices, because they are part of a context that is terrible. They are part of a life story that has gone very wrong. But they can still choose. They can choose little things in therapy. They can choose little things in whatever activities we're doing. And they can also choose bigger things in their lives and their choices. So we work a lot on choice and freedom, and what freedom they have in the limitations of their life. Okay. So another concept that is very dear to us is the being in the world with others from Heidegger. So we are all beings in the world with others, and there is a grounding of relatedness, like Spinelli says. There is a connection between us all, and we are not that different from each other. And we use the 4 dimensions of existence, initially proposed by Binswanger, and then Emmy van Duysen has worked a lot on this, of 4 dimensions of existence. And we've been thinking about how this can be different for adults and children, and adolescents as well, where the world is lived in a different way from adults. Children are much more dependent of others, and of significant others who choose many things for them and who guide them sometimes very well or not very well. They're very also dependent on the physical world in a different way than we are, so they experience things happening to them in a different way than we do. Also, physically they're also smaller, so everything is also quite different. And these 2 areas of their existence really change their experience of what it is to live. And what we find is that many times meaning, the meaning of some issue they bring is often blocked to the others of their life or to their physicality of their life. And together we try to find meaning in whatever they bring. I don't know if this was clear. Okay, so a couple of years ago we were asked to think about the way that we work, and to perhaps try to work in a model of 10 to 12 sessions with these clients. And at first it seemed very difficult to us because these cases are all very complicated and very complex, and the parents are usually in continual crisis, so everything is always going wrong constantly. And we thought, okay, but we can't simply start working in a 10 to 12 session way if we don't experience that in our normal work. So we thought, okay, let's stop and evaluate what we're doing. And let's try to understand how it is for our clients to go through therapy in this place, and do a cutoff point at 10 sessions and see how they are. If they need to continue, they will, and we assure that. But we try to understand how it is for them. And when we try to evaluate this with the clients, we try to think, how can we work with the children and they can have a say into how therapy feels for them, but also the parents can have a say because they obviously bring them to therapy. So we thought, okay, we have to think about how we can evaluate our work. And so we connected with ISPA, University Institute, who already collaborates with us, and we are doing a little research project, which hopefully will become a lot bigger soon. And so what have we tried to do? So we tried to not change our work, but to evaluate at different points what therapy is like for the families and for the children. So there's an initial triage, which is typical. It's usually done by psychologists at our service. And we try to just evaluate if the child needs therapy, if they need any other thing. Sometimes they need other evaluations or health. So we try to understand what brings them to therapy, but we have this initial triage. Because not all children need therapy, and not all children need immediate therapy. They need other things to happen before. So that is what we do. And then in the first session, we have the mother, the father, the child, and together we look at what has brought them there. And we try to understand the child's development and how that happened. And together we define therapy goals. And so here we use some instruments. And so we have used the core YP instrument to understand the psychological distress of the child for 11 to 15-year-olds, this at the first session. And together we've also used the personal questionnaire, which is a PQ, in which people bring whatever is distressing them, and we try to turn that into goals and what they expect therapy to be like. And so this is the initial screening. Then we have therapy with the child. Whenever it is needed, we call the parents in to help us understand what is happening with the child, because the meaning is, as I said, very connected to the parents. Whenever they need, we give them parenting counseling. And so therapy continues, and then at the 10th session, 10 to 12 sessions, we do a cutoff, and there we give them again the core YP for them to fill out. The child fills that out. They also do, once again, the PQ, and then they have the client change interview, which we have adapted so it can be done to the child and to the parents. So we have all this feedback for their experience of being in therapy in an existential way. So I don't have results yet, and I'm very sorry for this. I'm very sad for this. I think in a couple of weeks things will start emerging more. But to try to do a research project in the community is both very, it's easier than we thought, but it's also harder than we thought in different ways. The families reacted very well to participation, which we thought was quite surprising, but it was wonderful. They really tried to help us understand how changes felt for them in therapy. But the very low literacy means it's very hard to apply typical instruments, so it took us quite a while to understand how we can adapt the instruments to the population. Sometimes they really need help, especially in the client change interview. It can be very hard for them to express what has happened. So it's been quite a challenge. What we do know so far is that there is change, and it is not, apparently, from my preliminary results, it is not significant. But that's not strange because it's only 10 to 12 sessions, so they probably need some more sessions. And funny enough, the parents, when they talked about how they felt therapy, they themselves mentioned, oh, this and this hasn't happened because we need just more time. That's all we need is more sessions. So they were actually giving us what we were looking for without us actually prompting them to say that. And so above all, we can understand that there is change, how it is experienced in a quantitative and qualitative way, and how this has an impact on their lives. The fixed amount of sessions, we are still trying to connect to that and see how it's going to work. Thankfully, I don't have to limit my sessions, and we can continue. And so far, we have seen this connection between the theory and the practice, in which the meaning for whatever is happening, and when things are blocked, that together with the parents, we can help them also to be therapeutic in their very limited way, but they can also be a useful part of therapy. Okay, so this is it. Thank you.
Thank you, both.